The sky over Oyo grew strangely dim, as if the heavens themselves were afraid. The palace drums echoed restlessly, beating warnings the land refused to ignore. Ifa had spoken, and its prophecy was unforgiving. War would destroy the king's lineage forever. Before we continue, ask yourself this. If destiny threatened you, would you obey it or dare it to break? Alaafin Adewale stood in the courtyard, young yet burning with pride. Power rested on his shoulders like a crown of fire, and he believed nothing could tame him. The chiefs knelt before him, their faces calm but their hearts trembling. They had seen kings rise and fall, but never one who dared to challenge the gods. "I do not fear fate," Adewale declared, his voice slicing through the air. "I will not bow to a warning. I am the ruler of Oyo, and Oyo does not retreat." Whispers swept through the palace like wind through dry leaves. Some admired his courage. Others felt doom tightening around the empire like a tightening rope. And somewhere in the shadows, enemies smiled quietly, for a king ruled by pride was already standing at the edge of his own downfall. Morning sunlight washed over Oyo, yet the palace felt colder than Harmattan wind. Before we go further, my people, tell me where you're watching from: Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, London. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want more powerful African tales like this. The council elders gathered beneath towering pillars carved with stories of past kings. Their voices were low, their eyes far from calm. Baba Ogundele, the oldest of them, tapped his staff on the floor. "Alaafin," he said carefully, "even the bravest warrior must respect the voice of destiny." Adewale clenched his jaw, his pride wrestling with the echo of Ifa's warning. "Destiny belongs to the strong, and I am strong enough to bend it." Some elders bowed their heads in silence. Others exchanged troubled glances, feeling the land shift beneath them like unstable earth. Outside the palace gate, murmurs spread. Some villagers praised their king's courage. Others feared his arrogance was opening the door to ruin. And lurking behind loyalty's mask, a few powerful men began to quietly sharpen their ambitions, their patience, and their betrayal. Night crept into Oyo like a thief, and with it came dangerous whispers. The palace lamps burned bright, but danger walked where the light could not reach. Among the Alaafin's trusted council stood Bashorun Kande, a man whose loyalty glittered like gold on the surface but rusted with greed inside. He smiled in public, bowing deeply to the king, but in secret rooms he spoke differently. "Adewale thinks himself greater than prophecy," he murmured. "Then perhaps fate needs assistance." A small circle of conspirators leaned closer, their eyes dark with ambition. If war came, chaos would come, and in chaos, power could be stolen. Back in his chamber, Adewale stood at the balcony, staring over Oyo's torches flickering like a restless sea of stars. He felt uneasy, though he refused to name the feeling fear. His young queen approached silently, resting a gentle hand on his arm. "Listen to the drums," she whispered. "They beat anxiously. Oyo itself is worried." Adewale turned away, not ready to hear truth even from love. Pride once again sealed his ears tighter than iron. The Ifa priest returned, summoned by desperation rather than respect. He entered the palace barefoot, his face carved with sorrow like stone soaked in grief. "O Alaafin," he began softly, "I spoke once and you did not listen, but I must speak again. War will not only stain the land with blood, it will erase your name from destiny." Adewale stiffened. The word struck him, but his spirit stood stubborn. "If I retreat," he said, "I will be remembered as a coward king. I will never wear that shame." The priest shook his head. "Better to live humbled than to die proud. This war will not come from distant enemies. It is already inside your walls." Those words pierced deeper than a spear. The council exchanged frightened glances, suddenly aware that betrayal was not a future event, it was breathing among them. Adewale's heart pounded harshly. Anger flared, not at the priest's message, but at the idea that anyone dared threaten him from within. Without realizing it, the king had now declared war, not just against enemies beyond Oyo, but against fate, loyalty, and time itself. Days passed, and tension wrapped Oyo like an invisible chain. Drums slowed, conversations dropped to whispers, and every sound felt heavy with warning. Market women spoke softly while selling goods, glancing toward the palace like it might suddenly break apart. Hunters sharpened spears, farmers listened to the wind for omens. At night, the streets grew quieter than usual. Even the crickets seemed to fear singing too loudly beneath the anxious moon. Inside the palace, Adewale began sleeping less, pacing halls where his ancestors' portraits seemed to watch him with silent judgment. His queen prayed quietly, asking the spirits to guide him, asking the gods to forgive what pride would not. Meanwhile, Basharon Kandi's plans tightened. His allies moved like shadows, unseen yet dangerously present, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Oyo did not yet know it, but the storm was no longer approaching, it was already standing at the gate, knocking with iron hands. The council gathered again, but this time respect was thinner and fear was thicker. The air itself felt tense like a bowstring pulled too tight. Basharon Kandi spoke gently, like a friend offering comfort. "Your Majesty, perhaps war is not the enemy. Hesitation is." Some elders nodded slowly, unsure whether they agreed or were simply afraid not to. Adewale lifted his chin, the fire in his spirit burning brighter than wisdom. "If war comes, let it come. Oyo will not kneel." The priest watched silently, his heart sinking like a stone into deep water. Outside, thunder rumbled in a cloudless sky, as if the heavens themselves sighed in sorrow. And in the silence that followed, a destiny-shifting decision quietly rooted. One night, screams split the silence like lightning across dark skies. Flames burst into the market district, turning calm darkness into chaos. Women grabbed children, men ran for water. Fear spread faster than the fire itself. Soldiers rushed forward, but confusion ruled the moment. No one knew where the attack came from or who truly caused it.
From the palace tower, Adewale watched the burning glow rising into the sky. His heart clenched in rage. "Someone is testing me." Basharon Kande arrived, face filled with false concern. "Your enemies grow bold, Alaafin. If you delay, they will swallow Oyo whole." The king's anger hardened into resolve. Doubt faded. War now felt like the only answer. And hidden in the smoke, the true enemy smiled at how easily fire could control a king. Morning came with a terrible announcement. The war drums began their thunderous cry. Oyo was marching toward conflict. Messengers raced through villages, summoning warriors, calling families to prepare for loss and uncertainty. Mothers prayed, fathers sharpened blades, children stared wide-eyed, learning early that destiny was rarely gentle. Adewale stood before his army, shoulders squared, pride unbroken. "Oyo will never bow," he roared. The warriors shouted back, loyalty blinding them to the storm behind their own king. The Ifa priest watched from afar, tears blurring his vision of a future already collapsing. And while the kingdom prepared for external enemies, Betrayal continued to polish its dagger behind palace walls. Inside the palace, the queen fought a war of her own, a war of fear versus faith. Her heart loved her husband, but wisdom whispered danger. She visited the shrine alone, kneeling before the gods, begging not for victory, but for mercy. "Spare Oyo," she whispered. "Even if pride blinds the crown, do not punish the people." Her attendants watched her, hearts aching at the sight of royalty bowed and trembling. Meanwhile, palace corridors buzzed with secret movements. Trusted servants now carried hidden messages. Some swore loyalty, others quietly chose survival over honor. And the queen, though wrapped in royal cloth, suddenly felt painfully alone.
The warriors marched out of Oyo with confidence, but back in the city, trust began to crumble like weakened stone. The council split. Some truly supported the king, while others watched him walk toward destruction with cold patience. Basharun Kande moved with careful grace, planting doubt, feeding fear, smiling politely while poisoning loyalty from within. Will the king return, some whispered, or has he led us all toward death? Shadows stretched longer in the palace halls, holding secrets in their dark folds. Even the walls seemed to listen, storing every whisper of betrayal. And as Oyo watched its proud king ride into destiny, the kingdom itself slowly began to fall apart from the inside. The battlefield stretched wide beneath a scorching sun, the ground trembling beneath marching feet. Spears glinted, shields locked, and drums thundered like angry hearts. Adewale rode forward, his presence fierce and commanding, refusing to let fear stain his pride. The enemy advanced like a dark tide, calm and confident, as if they already knew the prophecy favored them. Swords clashed, spears flew, war swallowed the land in noise, dust and blood. For a moment, Oyo held strong, their king at the front, fighting like a man determined to outrun fate. But fate does not tire, and slowly the tide began to change. And somewhere behind the chaos, betrayal quietly tightened its grip. By evening, silence returned to the battlefield, but it was not peace, only exhaustion. Bodies lay still, dust stained with sacrifice. Oyo had not been defeated, but neither had they truly won. It was a victory that tasted bitter, like food without salt. Adewale stared across the field, seeing not glory, but the cost of his stubbornness scattered before him. His generals exchanged uneasy glances. "We can still push forward," they said, but their voices lacked confidence.
The king forced pride back into his heart, refusing to accept weakness as truth. Yet deep inside, a quiet fear began to whisper, what if the oracle was right? And far away, in Oyo, the conspirators quietly celebrated the king's slow unraveling. While the king planned his next assault, Oyo faced a different kind of attack, one without swords, but deadlier than steel. Basharun Kande made his move, spreading lies wrapped in careful truth. "The king is reckless," he whispered. "He leads us toward extinction." Some nodded, angry at the losses. Others hesitated, loyalty wrestling with doubt. Slowly, fear began to outweigh devotion. Guards were bribed, alliances shifted. Loyalty became a luxury many could no longer afford. The queen felt the kingdom shaking beneath her feet, though no battle was being fought in front of her eyes. And by nightfall, power quietly began shifting away from the throne. The palace felt colder than ever. Once a place of power, it now felt like a cage closing in. The queen gathered the trusted few who remained. Their faces showed loyalty, but also fear. "We must protect the throne," she whispered. "Even if the king has lost his way, Oyo must stand." They nodded,
But doubt lingered. Could loyalty hold when the kingdom itself was breaking? Outside, the people murmured restlessly, sensing something terrible growing, even if they couldn't name it. The queen lifted her chin, strength born from love rather than pride. Yet even her courage trembled under the weight of uncertainty. Word finally reached the battlefield, but it was not news of support, it was news of betrayal. Adewale listened in stunned silence as messengers revealed the truth. The council was divided, and Basharon Kande was gathering power against him. The king's heart thundered louder than the war drums. "While I fight enemies outside," he whispered, "my own council becomes my greatest enemy." His generals looked to him anxiously, waiting for strength, but for the first time, they saw real fear in their king's eyes. Pride cracked, confidence wavered, destiny laughed. The war was no longer just on the battlefield, it had crawled into his throne room. And now the Alaafin had to face a truth he had long ignored. Sometimes the deadliest battles are fought at home. The king stood between two impossible choices: continue the war or return home to save his throne. Either path held danger like a waiting serpent. His commanders urged strength. "Press forward," they insisted. "Victory will silence your enemies." But another voice rose inside him, a rare whisper of humility. What if victory never came? What if Oyo bled for nothing? He had never felt the weight of leadership so painfully heavy. For the first time, Adewale realized that being king was not only about power, it was about sacrifice. And destiny was demanding a sacrifice he wasn't ready to give. In the end, he chose to turn back. The army began its journey home, their morale shaken, their hearts uncertain. Oyo watched their king's return with mixed emotions, some relieved, some disappointed, others quietly planning his downfall. The palace courtyard filled with tense silence as Adewale stepped down from his horse, his pride thinner, his spirit troubled. Bashorun Kande greeted him with a smile that hid 1,000 knives. "Welcome home, Alaafin," he said sweetly. The king looked around and saw loyalty had become fragile like cracked glass. Home did not feel like safety anymore. It felt like the center of a storm. Adewale summoned the council. This time there was no shouting, only an uncomfortable stillness. He looked each elder in the eye, lingering longest on Basharon Kande. "There are enemies in Oyo," he said quietly, "and they do not wear foreign armor." Kande pretended shock. "Who would dare betray the throne?" he asked, voice dripping with innocence. But beneath the table, hands tightened, eyes shifted. Truth hovered in the air like invisible smoke. The king felt his anger rising, but it was no longer prideful fury. It was wounded disappointment. He had trusted them. Now trust was a weapon pointed at his heart. That night, Adewale did something no one expected. He went to the shrine alone. No crown, no guards, just a humbled king and a broken man. He knelt before Ifa, the same oracle he once ignored. Tears filled his eyes, not from weakness, but from finally understanding. He whispered, "Forgive me," he whispered. "I tried to fight fate instead of learning from it." For the first time, the burden of pride loosened. In its place came clarity, late but powerful. He rose with a new determination, not to protect his throne, but to protect his people, even if it meant losing everything. Dawn arrived with tension thick in the air. The people gathered, the council assembled, the kingdom held its breath. Adewale addressed Oyo, not with arrogance, but with humility. He admitted his mistakes. He acknowledged the prophecy. He promised to choose his people over his pride. Some were moved, others remained hardened, but the kingdom finally saw something they had not seen before: growth. Basharon Kande's plans weakened. Betrayal lost its power because nothing is harder to defeat than a man who has faced himself and changed. Oyo's future remained uncertain, but its king was no longer ruled by pride, he was guided by wisdom. And that alone gave the kingdom hope. If you follow this powerful journey, tell me where you're watching from: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, UK, US. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can experience these deep African stories filled with lessons, culture, and heart.